All right, so here we are back on the 880 project. It's been a while. So anyway, you can go back and check out, I'll put a playlist together for you of all the 880, and what we did on that 880 was a steel engine check, and I think it's 4 parts. And again, it's very in depth and kind of goes through every bit of it, but it kind of gives you an idea of what to look for. And if you took something to your steel dealer and they said they did a steel engine check on it, and it kind of eliminates all these little problems right off the bat. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of repairing small engines. So it's a really handy thing, and I enjoy working with it, and it's a wonderful system. So you can go back and check that out. And of course, we found out that the screws were wrong in this 880, and it caused a lean seizure in it. So of course, you can go back and look at how we told that, and went through all the process to determine what was going on. And so we got our parts in. They've been in for a while, and again, we've just been slam busy on 10,000 different projects. But I need to get this saw back together because we've got a really fun project coming up for it, and I just need to get it back together. So I'm going to take this afternoon and try to get this thing all buttoned up, and I'm not sure if I can get it all done in the amount of time I have today, but we'll go as far as we can. Now, I'm going to roll some footage in here of spraying out the crankcase. I didn't fool with cleaning any of that earlier because it just get dirty again. And we kept a rag over it, and of course, the ready to get it all cleaned up and put it back together now. So I just took brake clean and just cleaned that crankcase, ran it through the bearings and all of it, just trying to get it super, super clean. And the problem with that is there's going to be no lubrication in there. So what I did was spread it all out, took the air out to the main shop. You didn't see that bit, and I just blew it out with an air hose just to make sure I didn't leave any trace of anything inside there. And so now what we'll do is I'm going to run some, you'll see here in a second, I'm going to put some of our engine oil, the oil mix. I'm going to put it in those bearings and run them around a little bit, get them all lubed up, because I do not want that thing starting dry with no lube in there, because that thing goes from 0 to I don't know, I think that's 11 or 12 or something thousand RPM. It's not super fast saw, but still that's pretty quick, and we don't want that doing that dry. So what I'm going to do is put some oil in that before we start putting any of the top end back together. And of course we'll be using that same oil to lube the rings and all that when it goes together. So anyway, I'm going to kind of set you up here and let you watch this thing be reassembled. And I'm pretty excited to get it together and let y'all watch it run a little bit. So anyway, we'll talk to you there soon. All right, so we're going to be using our STIHL engine, our STIHL work stand here. This ball is absolutely amazing to be working with. So we're going to install our 880 onto it. There we go. Let me turn it back a little bit so you can kind of see. Whoops, that's the adjust one. Here's what I want. There you go. I think you can see that a little better. I need to get a new bar clamp nut. We lost one, and that one is too small, but it will work for today. There we go. A little chip in that cover right there. Hardly nothing. So yeah, she's looking good here. I might spray a little bit of this off too while I'm here cleaning. Gotta be careful with some brake cleaners. They will eat not only paint but plastic, so kind of be mindful of that whenever you're working on these saws. Some of them, I forget what that stuff was. It was in a red can, and my goodness gracious, it would, I was trying to clean a set of taillights up before I put them in a trailer or a truck bed or something. Wow, they just melted them. So just bear that in mind. This stuff here seems to do pretty good. It will eat certain paints, but make them tacky. You can see that paint on that. Every time was blistered it up a little, but yeah, that's looking pretty good. Get the heavy off. I always like to try to get clean as I can. Now, again, probably saw some quick footage there in the beginning of kind of going over cleaning that out. So we're going to go now, and also I blew back through this, and also blew through this pulse line. So I blew back that way, so if there was any trash in that, it wouldn't go back into our crankcase. So it's all good and clean. We're ready to get started putting this thing back together. So first step is to get a little bit of this oil here. I keep one of these, and I don't put it where I store the rest of my oil, because this one will be short. It won't have a full mixture rate in it. I usually get them on 1 gallon sizes if I'm not doing any great big jobs, and a little easier to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work some of this oil down in here into these bearings. What if I turn the crankshaft instead of the clutch, wouldn't it? Whoa, that'll work. It'll get there eventually. There we go. That's what I'm looking for right there. Now that'll get that bearing all happy now. It looks really good. I'm going to run it around there a few times. Make sure we have plenty of lubrication in that thing. Like that. Now, and again, you probably don't have to do this. I just can't stand the thought of a dry bearing though. So I'm going to run a little bit down in the side of that bearing. That's our PTO side bearing. And I'm just holding on to this rod so it doesn't nick everything and beat it all to death. That looks really good. Now if I was putting this saw together from scratch, I'd just do this out before I put it together. But since we didn't pull the crank because we didn't need to. The crank seals tested good. And this saw is a very, very low use saw. It was just a screw problem, all was wrong with it. So and it tore at the top end. So there's no real need to get crazy with all the rest of that. So now what I'm going to do, so I don't have a bunch of oil down in the bottom of that thing, I'm just going to take it back off of this. Sorry, didn't mean to bump you guys there. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm just going to take this back off and let it hang upside down for just a minute and drip any of that extra oil out, because we don't want a bunch of oil laying around in there and make a big old smoky mess. There we go. I didn't need to do that. We might want to turn that thing. There we go. All right. We'll put the lid back on our service can of oil right there. All right, while that is hanging upside down dripping, we're going to look at our old parts. And again, right there is the piston. This is the exhaust side right here. And you can see how it just kind of welded the rings down into that piston. And of course, our intake side, they're just perfect, right like they should be. They're not stuck or anything. Had a little bit of scoring right here, but no big deal. And this side here is just wiped out. So that's what our problem was. And of course, just to recap, we kind of knew there was a problem as soon as we took our filter off, our muffler housing off, and we saw it's full of dust right now, sawdust, but it had this real light aluminum looking color to it. And of course that was piston. So that's what that's all about. You kind of see that shade there. But we're going to take a few minutes and try to get some parts here all ready to go. We've got some new parts to put in here, and there's our new cylinder gasket. That'll be one of the first things that go in. Now, I went ahead and got seals for this, but we're not going to need them, so we're not going to put them in. I'm just going to put them in our parts bin back there, and part shelf. That way we'll have it if we need it, and later on. But they tested good. Now, the other thing too about that is they may have tested good, but when we put this back together, we're going to test it before we start it. That's a common problem people overlook, or a common step people overlook, is not testing it before they put it back together, or before they try to start it after they put it back together. And they'll still have a minor leak somewhere. I've got a 460 over here that happened to. When it failed, the crankshaft went around and poked a hole down in the bottom of it, or the connecting rod did. And no, I'm sorry, that was the 660 that had that problem. And the one that we had the problem with was a tree landed on it. I'm sorry, yeah, the tree. So what we had there was there you can kind of see a thing all packed up in a rag. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Maybe it was. I hope it's a good one. Yeah, it looks good. But there's our new cylinder and piston from STIHL. Making sure it all is good right there. Steel block or cylinder unit right there. There's a Molly piston. I think's what it said right there. EMAHLE cast down in the side of that piston. So this was made on 16th day of February of 2018. So she's been in stock somewhere for a while. There she is. We'll blow all that dust out of in there. All right. Together with a little piece of interesting zip tie looking stuff. Now we'll put a little oil in the rings and stuff too. There's no need really to pull this piston out of here. We should be able to put it together so we don't have to recompress the rings. Now our new piston comes with some goodies here. Anyway, back to that, talking about the crack. That one had a tree fall on that 460. It had a tree fell on it, and it had a minor crack in the bottom of the crankcase. And when that happened, is an air leak, and it'd give you the same symptom as this right here: too much air, not enough fuel, and it'll do a lean seizure there. So we always want to be real careful to not have that problem. So this place is a dusty mess right now. All right, so here is our new air filter. I guess I don't. We'll have to clean that one up. It fell out a minute ago. Here's a couple screws that I needed. New ones, and a new fuel filter, and a new piece of hose. That all looks pretty good. That is very strange that that's all open with shop rags around it, isn't it? I hope everything's all right there. That doesn't look like typical steel packaging. But anyway, well, I'm going to step outside and blow some of this out real quick, and we'll be blowing in an outward direction. There's a lot of little fuzz in there from those shop rags. So get all that cleaned out real good, and we'll get ready to put this thing back together. All right, so it almost looks like this thing has been installed once before. You can kind of see where it's been fastened. That may have been where it was put in a jig to machine it, so I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out here. But so we're going to go ahead and get this thing ready to put together. Then blew it out a little bit with an air hose. All I'm really looking to do is get this piston right about there. That's all I need. Yeah, there we go. All right, so let's see what we have here. Let's set those there. Okay, so this was also a Molle piston. You can see M-A-H-L-E down in there, and that's on the intake side. So we're going to assemble it the same direction. There's also a nub right here you can look at. So when we compare, we've got Molle and the nub, and that would go toward the intake side. So we can put it all back together just the same way it came apart. So I'm going to take just a moment here and get all that oriented correctly. So this is going to be our muffler port. Here's going to be where intake boot goes on. So I want Molle over to the intake. So I'm just going to spin it real slow here. Perfect. There we have it, Molle to the intake. And our nub, that should be toward our flywheel side. Let's just verify that. So if we had our exhaust on the front, then our nub is going to be on the flywheel side, nothing on the PTO side. Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and mount the saw back up, and we'll put a gasket in place and start getting this fella put together. Oh yeah, that looks good. Get a fresh rag. We'll wipe any residual oil off of anything here so it's not messy. Rather have just a tad too much in the bottom end as a tad too little. Oh, that feels really good. Let it around a few times. All right. All right, there we go. Now let's get this thing set about right there. I'm gonna have to. We'll clean up our wrist pin here real fast. Wrist pin bushing. The bearing, this thing actually has bearings in it. All right, so there's our piston pin or wrist pin bushing, or bearing rather. I keep calling it bushing. Bigger engines, it's a bushing. So we're going to put us a little bit of oil on this. There we go. Make sure it gets all in there real good. Inside and out. I like it. Roll it around in there a little. Beautiful. Now, let's go ahead and just wipe a little bit of that off there. I got a little too much there, didn't I? All right, so now we're ready to install our gasket. Guess you need a part number. There it is. Or actually, you're probably looking at it that way. Sorry. Cylinder gasket. So now we're putting that section to go down. The flange section is up higher. So that's what we're going to do, because that's the way the last one was, and it doesn't say anywhere in here about what to do there. So I don't see anything talking about. It just says line up the holes, place the cylinder gasket in position. And it doesn't say anything about direction. So we're going to put it that way, and hope for the best. All right, so we're now ready. Now it says in the manual doing this in separate pieces, but I'm gonna give it one quick try, all in one, and go from there. If it goes smooth, it goes smooth. If it doesn't, well, then it doesn't. Let me find our pins here. There's our new piston pin. Set him right there. And a new circlip. One circlip is already installed, so we don't have to worry about that. We'll be taking it in from the easy side, thankfully. Right there's our pin. We're just going to put a little bit of oil on that fella. There we go. Put our wood block in place. Hold our crankshaft, our connecting rod up where it belongs. Make sure it's good and clean. That will allow our piston to rest on it. Again, exhaust port to the front. All right, now I've found that a nut driver here fits that hole perfectly. And that takes care of that. Put the lid back on our oil so we don't get contaminants in it. I'm going to spin this fella around so we can get that clip in and y'all can see it a little better. There we go. Now our goal is to not drop the clip. And we gotta have a goal, right? You know what? I'm gonna have to pull the cylinder. I can't get my finger in there. I don't know, let me try right there. That might be just enough. Be a little hateful, isn't it? Move it a little bit away from that notch. I don't want to drop it down in there. If I do, it ain't the end of the world, but rather not. There we go. We're getting there now. There we go. Now I don't want the gap at that hole, so I want to attempt to move it around there a little. Again, that's probably just an OCD thing, but I don't want it to chance of coming out of there. Going to turn that a little so that it doesn't catch. And just push it right around there. There, that's getting better. We're going to put it opposite the groove right there. Okay, now piston pin is in place. You know, I think I'm still going to pull that because I don't know how much oil they put on that from the factory. So we're going to go ahead and pull it. If those rings are dry, yeah, they didn't lube them any, so we want to look in there anyway, don't we? There's a brand new cylinder. Yeah. There's a little port. Yeah, there we go. All right, so if you're wondering, you can do it in the machine. I mean, the piston can be done in the cylinder, and where we go. But anyway, I'm going to oil these rings. I don't like them going on dry. Those little rings are sharp too, so don't cut yourself all up on them or anything. Again, it's probably not a necessary thing, but I like doing it. A little oil on our skirt too. Oh yeah. Get our little wood block back here. Now there's only certain spots these rings you can go. You can kind of see how they have those stops. So we want to make sure we maintain that. Now we're going to take our, turn that to right there. We have our piston ring compressor here handy. I'm going to put just a little bit of oil inside the cylinder. Just a little bit. So nothing's dry. She might smoke a little, but we're not going to get any puddles of it up in the top or anything. Just enough to, well, now we have an arrow on the front of the piston right here. There's our arrow on the front of that piston, again, going toward the exhaust port. We're just verifying as we go. Doesn't hurt to make sure we get it right the first time. We'll set that cylinder down for a second. And get our rings compressed. It's a pretty simple ring compressing tool. And then the cylinder, I need to get my hand relocated here real fast. There we go. Then the cylinder just kind of pushes that right out of the way. So I hope it's where you can see it there. I'm going to wind it up. I got just a little bit of reveal right there on the top of that piston. Also double checking, making sure my gasket's installed. If you forget a gasket, right now is the time to fix it. All right, so there's our cylinder installed. I'm going to wipe this off before I put it back in the toolbox because I live in an extremely dusty environment here in this saw shop. So sawmill sitting outdoors, so I try to keep that stuff clean as I can. All right, so all that looks really good. So now we are ready to pull our block. Put it up too. We're done with it for now. And let's get our stuff all lined up here. There we go. Looks really good. And that looks even better. Gasket all where it belongs. Perfect. Now we need our cylinder bolts. really like these handles here for the tools. They are super awesome. Helps if you put them in the right place though, doesn't it? These go down in the bottom. There we go. See if we can get one of them started here. So you want to look at our gasket there. It's not exactly, there we go, that looks a little more better. Perfect. Again, I'm not tightening anything until we get everything started. That looks good. Some of these screws, they're really a pain to get into place. I'm going to tip this saw over a little bit. Gravity work for me for a few minutes here. Again, I can't speak highly enough of this saw fixture. We have to lift that a little to get that bolt in there. Get around the side. There we go. Perfect. Again, I'm just going to get him started wherever that hole is. Right there it is. Just enough to hold it all in place, but we can still move a little. Y'all get blinded by the bald spot, I apologize. They took my hat off because I kept hitting it on the camera there, so hopefully it doesn't blind y'all too bad. Now, I've got a bolt down in there that's going to be really tricky to install. I'm going to try to put a little grease on the end of that. Now, it's not the end of the world. It might smoke a little when you get it going, but all I'm trying to do is get that thing down there into that hole, and it is hard to get to. So I'm going to use that grease. Now, I've got it started in the hole, so I'm just going to take a long screwdriver and hold the bolt there, pull the tool out, and it fell right in there. And again, the saw fixture allows that to happen because I can put it to where it's falling perfectly straight up and down. Now again, that might smoke a little bit whenever it's warming up and that grease is burning off, but now see how simple that was? That is a bear to do without this tool. That little dab of grease on your Torx tool as well. All right, so that is really looking good. All right, I'm not going to get crazy with that just yet. Around here and these guys into place. Just getting all in where they belong. Line up our torque specs, get all this knocked out. Whenever you're done, you always back your torque wrench back off, and there we have it. We need to go ahead and transfer the rest of our cylinder parts over here. So we should have a new spark plug here. Again, as we talked about before, make sure it doesn't have a removable top on it. Make sure that it goes right in there. And looks like it. That screw tightened up down there real quick, get that thing all looking good. I'll tighten this before I go too much further in case I have to get silly with getting that thing tightened. that looks good. Now, actually, I'm going to pull this. Getting ahead of myself. We're going to go ahead and do a cylinder test here to make sure nothing is leaking. Put our plug in place. All right, there we go. Now let's get the front. All right, so that should seal everything up. Again, we're blocking it off. We're checking everything from this boot out to the end of the muffler, or the beginning of the muffler, and everything in the top of the cylinder and down in the bottom of the cylinder. And we're going to do that right here on this guy with our pump. We're going to do a vacuum and a pressure test. All right, so let's get our steel engine check sheet here, and it says here that we should be seeing crankcase specifications 0.5 bar. Let's see what we've got there. All right, first thing we're going to do is pressure. Take a while because we got to fill up that whole cylinder. So the black is bar, so we've got to get that thing to 0.5. Now again, this is a test that, again, a lot of people overlook, but this will tell us if we have a bad cylinder. It'll tell us if our gasket's good between the cylinder and the crankcase. It'll tell us a whole lot of stuff. But where if we end up with a problem there, then it'll show up now instead of a lean seizure later because, you know, we had a little overlooked problem there. So we don't want to do that. All right, so now we're going to pull a vacuum in there. Same deal. Should hold for 20 seconds. It's looking really good, not a drop of movement. So again, this is just seen too much of this go back together with, and heard stories about too much of it go back together with a minor itty bitty problem in there and end up costing another engine. So we don't want to do that. We want to do it right the first time if possible. All right, so there we go. That's what we were wanting to see. Now again, we're going to be doing this STIHL engine check backwards as we put our different components in. So that's what the kind of mindset you want to have when you're going at this thing. So we don't want any problems. So we're good there. Now we're going to pull all this back apart. Again, it might seem like a little extra work, but and again, I don't do this every day. Somebody that does this every day, they can really make some time on this. They don't have to hunt for the different spacers and think of what you use. We don't have the right spacers for an 880, so I'm using parts that we're going to be installing here later to do that. And you can see there how this blocked off. I'm not testing through the carburetor. I'm just using that carburetor as a test fixture. And there is our little block off piece of rubber for the carburetor side, intake side. Now we're going to remove the muffler. Do the same thing over there. Gotta remember to make sure you put the gasket back in there for the muffler as well. We'll slide this out sideways because it'll clear. That over there. Wonderful. There we go. All right, so take a minute. A little bit of that excess oil off of there because it'll get hot and get all smoky being close to the muffler, and it'll be a dust magnet. And we just kind of, I don't know, I don't do a very good job of keeping things super clean. I enjoy super clean things, but that's just not something I have time for. So it's one of those things. Now all that looks really good. We're going to go ahead and just rotate the piston through, make sure all that. Oh yeah, that feels really good. I'm going to pull our plug out of the top, test plug.